The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization is a specialized agency of the United Nations. Its purpose is to contribute to peace and security by promoting international collaboration through education, science, and culture in order to further universal respect for justice, the rule of law, and human rights along with fundamental freedom proclaimed in the UN Charter. It is the heir of the League of Nations International Commission on Intellectual Cooperation. UNESCO has 195 member states and 9 associate members. Most of the field offices are cluster offices covering 3 or more countries. There are also national and regional offices. UNESCO pursues its objectives through 5 major programs: education, natural sciences, social and human sciences, culture, and communication and information. Projects sponsored by UNESCO include literacy, technical, and teacher training programs, international science programs, the promotion of independent media and freedom of the press, regional and cultural history projects, the promotion of cultural diversity, translations of world literature, international cooperation agreements to secure the world cultural and natural heritage and to preserve human rights, and attempts to bridge the worldwide digital divide. It is also a member of the United Nations Development Group. UNESCO's aim is to contribute to the building of peace, the eradication of poverty, sustainable development and intercultural dialogue through education, the sciences, culture, communication and information. Other priorities of the organization include attaining quality education for all and lifelong learning, addressing emerging social and ethical challenges, fostering cultural diversity, a culture of peace and building inclusive knowledge societies through information and communication. The broad goals and concrete objectives of the international community are as set out in the internationally agreed development goals, including the Millennium Development Goals underpin all UNESCO's strategies and activities. History: UNESCO and its mandate for international cooperation can be traced back to the League of Nations resolution on September 21, 1921, to elect a commission to study the question. The International Committee on Intellectual Cooperation was officially created on January 4, 1922, as a consultative organ composed of individuals elected based on their personal qualifications. The International Institute for Intellectual Cooperation was then created in Paris on August 9, 1925, to act as the executing agency for the ICIC. On December 18, 1925, the International Bureau of Education began work as a non-governmental organization in the service of international educational development. However, the work of these predecessor organizations was largely interrupted by the onset of World War II. After the signing of the Atlantic Charter and the Declaration of the United Nations, the Conference of Allied Ministers of Education began meetings in London which continued between November 16, 1942 to December 5, 1945. On October 30, 1943, the necessity for an international organization was expressed in the Moscow Declaration, agreed upon by China, the United Kingdom, the United States of America and the USSR. This was followed by Dumbarton Oaks Conference proposals of October 9, 1944. Upon the proposal of Cayman and in accordance with the recommendations of the United Nations Conference on International Organization, held in San Francisco in April-June 1945, a United Nations Conference for the establishment of an educational and cultural organization was convened in London on November 16, 1945 with 44 governments represented. A prominent figure in the initiative for UNESCO was Rab Butler, the Minister of Education for the United Kingdom. At the ECOCONF, the Constitution of UNESCO was introduced and signed by 37 countries, and a Preparatory Commission was established. The Preparatory Commission operated between November 16, 1945, and November 4, 1946, the date when UNESCO's constitution came into force with the deposit of the 20th ratification by a member state. The first General Conference took place from November 19 to December 10, 1946, and elected Dr. Julian Huxley to the post of Director General. The constitution was amended in November 1954 when the General Conference resolved that members of the executive board would be representatives of the governments of the states of which they are nationals and would not, as before, act in their personal capacity. This change in governance distinguished UNESCO from its predecessor, the CICI, in terms of how member states would work together in the organization's fields of competence. As member states work together over time to realize UNESCO's mandate, political and historical factors have shaped the organization's operations, in particular during the Cold War, the decolonization process, and the dissolution of the USSR. Among the major achievements of the organization is its work against racism, for example through influential statements on race, starting with the Declaration of Anthropologists and Other Scientists in 1950 and concluding with the 1978 Declaration on Race and Racial Prejudice. In 1956, the Republic of South Africa withdrew from UNESCO, claiming that some of the organization's publications amounted to interference in the country's racial problems. South Africa rejoined the organization in 1994 under the leadership of Nelson Mandela. UNESCO's early work in the field of education included the pilot project on fundamental education in the Mobile Valley, Haiti, started in 1947. This project was followed by expert missions to other countries, including, for example, a mission to Afghanistan in 1949. In 1948, UNESCO recommended that member states should make free primary education compulsory and universal. In 1990, the World Conference on Education for All, in Jomtien, Thailand, launched a global movement to provide basic education for all children, youths and adults. 10 years later, the 2000 World Education Forum held in Dakar, Senegal, led member governments to commit to achieving basic education for all by 2015. UNESCO's early activities in the field of culture included, for example, the Nubia Campaign, launched in 1960. The purpose of the campaign was to move the Great Temple of Abu Simbel to keep it from being swamped by the Nile after construction of the Aswan Dam. During the 20-year campaign, 22 monuments and architectural complexes were relocated. This was the first and largest in a series of campaigns including Mohenjo-Daro, Fes, Kathmandu, Borobudur and the Acropolis. The organization's work on heritage led to the adoption, in 1972, of the Convention concerning the protection of the world cultural and natural heritage. The World Heritage Committee was established in 1976 and the first sites inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1978. Since then, important legal instruments on cultural heritage and diversity have been adopted by UNESCO member states in 2003 and 2005. An intergovernmental meeting of UNESCO in Paris in December 1951 led to the creation of the European Council for Nuclear Research in 1954. Arid Zone Programming, 1948 to Euro 1966, is another example of an early major UNESCO project in the field of natural sciences. In 1968, UNESCO organized the first intergovernmental conference aimed at reconciling the environment and development, a problem which continues to be addressed in the field of sustainable development. The main outcome of the 1968 conference was the creation of UNESCO's Man and the Biosphere program. In the field of communication, the free flow of information has been a priority for UNESCO from its beginnings. In the years immediately following World War II, efforts were concentrated on reconstruction and on the identification of needs for means of mass communication around the world. UNESCO started organizing training and education for journalists in the 1950s. In response to calls for a new world information and communication order in the late 1970s, UNESCO established the International Commission for the Study of Communication Problems, which produced the 1980 McBride Report. Following the McBride Report, UNESCO introduced the Information Society for All program and Toward Knowledge Societies program in the lead-up to the World Summit on the Information Society in 2003 and 2005. In 2011, Palestine became a UNESCO member following a vote in which 107 member states supported and 14 opposed. Laws passed in the United States in 1990 and 1994 mean that it cannot contribute financially to any UN organization that accepts Palestine as a full member. As a result, it withdrew its funding, which accounted for about 22% of UNESCO's budget. Israel also reacted to Palestine's admittance to UNESCO by freezing Israel payments to the UNESCO and imposing sanctions to the Palestinian Authority, claiming that Palestine's admittance would be detrimental to potential peace talks. 2 years after they stopped paying their dues to UNESCO, US and Israel lost UNESCO voting rights in 2013. Activities. UNESCO implements its activities through the 5 program areas of education, natural sciences, social and human sciences, culture, and communication and information. Education. UNESCO supports research in comparative education and provides expertise and fosters partnerships to strengthen national educational leadership and the capacity of countries to offer quality education for all. This includes the UNESCO Chairs, an international network of 644 UNESCO chairs, involving over 770 institutions in 126 countries. Environmental Conservation Organization, Convention Against Discrimination in Education adopted in 1960, organization of the International Conference on Adult Education in an interval of 12 years, publication of the Education for All Global Monitoring Report, UNESCO ASPNet, an international network of 8,000 schools in 170 countries. UNESCO does not accredit institutions of higher learning. UNESCO also issues public statements to educate the public, Seville's Statement on Violence, a statement adopted by UNESCO in 1989 to refute the notion that humans are biologically predisposed to organized violence. Designating projects and places of cultural and scientific significance, such as International Network of Geoparks, Biosphere Reserves, through the Programme on Man and the Biosphere, since 1971, City of Literature. In 2007, the first city to be given this title was Edinburgh, the site of Scotland's first circulating library. In 2008, Iowa City, Iowa became the City of Literature. Endangered Languages and Linguistic Diversity Projects, Masterpieces of the Oral and Intangible Heritage of Humanity, Memory of the World International Register, since 1997, Water Resources Management, through the International Hydrological Programme, since 1965, World Heritage Sites. Encouraging the free flow of ideas by images and words by promoting freedom of expression, freedom of the press and freedom of information legislation, through the International Programme for the Development of Communication and the Communication and Information Programme, promoting universal access to ICTs, through the Information for All Programme, promoting pluralism and cultural diversity in the media. Promoting events, such as International Decade for the Promotion of a Culture of Peace and Non-Violence for the Children of the World, 2001 Euro 2010, proclaimed by the UN in 1998, World Press Freedom Day, May 3 each year, to promote freedom of expression and freedom of the press as a basic human right and as crucial components of any healthy, democratic and free society. Criana Sección Esperança Sección in Brazil, in partnership with Rede Globo, to raise funds for community-based projects that foster social integration and violence prevention. International Literacy Day, International Year for the Culture of Peace. Founding and funding projects, such as Migration Museums Initiative, promoting the establishment of museums for cultural dialogue with migrant populations. UNESCO CEPES, the European Centre for Higher Education, established in 1972 in Bucharest, Romania, as a decentralized office to promote international cooperation in higher education in Europe as well as Canada, USA and Israel. Higher Education in Europe is its official journal. Free Software Directory. Since 1998, UNESCO and the Free Software Foundation have jointly funded this project cataloging free software. Fresh focusing resources on effective school health. OANA, Organization of Asia-Pacific News Agencies, International Council of Science, UNESCO Goodwill Ambassadors, ASAMPS, Asian Symposium on Medicinal Plants and Spices, a series of scientific conferences held in Asia, Botany 2000, a program supporting taxonomy, and biological and cultural diversity of medicinal and ornamental plants, and their protection against environmental pollution, the UNESCO collection of representative works, translating works of world literature both to and from multiple languages, from 1948 to 2005. Official UNESCO NGOs. UNESCO enjoys official relations with 322 international non-governmental organizations. Most of these are what UNESCO calls operational, a select few are formal. The highest form of affiliation to UNESCO is formal associate, and the 22 NGOs with formal associate relations occupying offices at UNESCO are: International Baccalaureate, Coordinating Committee for International Voluntary Service, Education International, International Association of Universities, International Council for Film, Television and Audio-Visual Communication, International Council for Philosophy and Humanistic Studies which publishes Diogenes, International Council for Science, International Council of Museums, International Council of Sport Science and Physical Education, International Council on Archives, International Council on Monuments and Sites, International Federation of Journalists, International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions, International Federation of Poetry Associations, International Music Council, International Police Association, International Scientific Council for Island Development, International Social Science Council, International Theatre Institute, International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, International Union of Technical Associations and Organizations, Union of International Associations, World Association of Newspapers, World Federation of Engineering Organizations, World Federation of UNESCO Clubs, Centers and Associations, Institutes and Centers. The institutes are specialized departments of the organization that support UNESCO's program, providing specialized support for cluster and national offices. International Bureau of Education in Geneva, UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning in Hamburg, UNESCO International Institute for Educational Planning in Paris and Buenos Aires, UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education in Moscow, UNESCO International Institute for Capacity Building in Africa in Addis Ababa, UNESCO International Institute for Higher Education in Latin America and the Caribbean in Caracas, UNESCO UNEVOC International Center for Technical and Vocational Education and Training in Bonn, UNESCO European Center for Higher Education in Bucharest, UNESCO IHE Institute for Water Education in Delft, International Center for Theoretical Physics in Trieste, UNESCO Institute for Statistics in Montreal. Official list of UNESCO prizes. UNESCO currently awards 22 prizes in education, science, culture and peace. FAR Copyright Lix Hufua T. Boigny Peace Prize, Laura Copyright L. UNESCO Awards for Women in Science, UNESCO King Sejong Literacy Prize, UNESCO Confucius Prize for Literacy, UNESCO Emir Jabbar al-Ahmad al-Jabbar al-Sabah Prize to promote quality education for persons with intellectual disabilities, UNESCO King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa Prize for the use of information and communication technologies in education, UNESCO Hamdan bin Rashid Al Maktoum Prize for outstanding practice and performance in enhancing the effectiveness of teachers, UNESCO Kalinga Prize for the popularization of science, UNESCO Institute Pasteur Medal for an outstanding contribution to the development of scientific knowledge that has a beneficial impact on human health, UNESCO Sultan Qaboos Prize for Environmental Preservation, Great Man-Made River International Water Prize for Water Resources in Arid Zones presented by UNESCO, Michel Baptiste Award for Biosphere Reserve Management, UNESCO Bilbao Prize for the Promotion of a Culture of Human Rights, UNESCO Prize for Peace Education, UNESCO Madamjeet Singh Prize for the Promotion of Tolerance and Non-Violence, UNESCO International Joseph Copyright Martyr Prize, UNESCO Avicenna Prize for Ethics in Science. UNESCO Juan Bosch Prize for the Promotion of Social Science Research in Latin America and the Caribbean, Shajor Prize for Arab Culture, Melina Mercury International Prize for the Safeguarding and Management of Cultural Landscapes, IPDC UNESCO Prize for Rural Communication, UNESCO Guillermo Cano World Press Freedom Prize, UNESCO Jikji Memory of the World Prize, Inactive Prizes, Carlos J. Finney Prize for Microbiology, International Sima Q. Den Bolivar Prize, UNESCO Prize for Human Rights Education, UNESCO Obangwema Mbasogo International Prize for Research in the Life Sciences, UNESCO Prize for the Promotion of the Arts, International Days observed at UNESCO. January 27, International Day of Commemoration in memory of the victims of the Holocaust. February 13, World Radio Day. February 21, International Mother Language Day. March 8, International Women's Day. March 21, International Day of Nowruz. March 21, World Poetry Day. March 21, International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. March 22, World Day for Water. March 20, International Francophony Day. April 23, World Book and Copyright Day. 30 April International Jazz Day. May 3, World Press Freedom Day. May 21, World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development. May 22, International Day for Biological Diversity. May 25, Africa Day/Africa Week. June 5, World Environment Day. June 8, World Oceans Day. August 9, International Day of the World's Indigenous People. August 12, International Youth Day. August 23, International Day for the Remembrance of the Slave Trade and its Abolition. September 8, International Literacy Day. 15 September International Day of Democracy. September 21, International Day of Peace. 5 October World Teachers Day. Second Wednesday in October, International Day for Disaster Reduction. October 17, International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. October 20, World Statistics Day. October 27, World Day for Audiovisual Heritage. November 10, World Science Day for Peace and Development. Third Thursday in November, World Philosophy Day. November 16, International Day for Tolerance. November 19, International Men's Day. November 25, International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. November 29, International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian People. December 1, World AIDS Day. December 10, Human Rights Day. December 18, International Migrants Day. Member States. As of October 2011, UNESCO counts 196 member states and 8 associate members. Some members are not independent states and some members have additional national organizing committees from some of their dependent territories. UNESCO state parties are most of the United Nations member states, Cook Islands, Niue, and the State of Palestine. Governing bodies, Director General. Elections for the renewal of the position of Director General took place in Paris from 7 to September 23, 2009. 8 candidates ran for the position, and 58 countries voted for them. The Executive Council gathered from 7 to September 23, the vote itself beginning on the 17th. Irina Bokova was elected the new Director General. The list of the Directors General of UNESCO since its establishment in 1946 is as follows: Julian Huxley, Jaime Torres Bode, John Wilkinson Taylor, Luther Evans, Vitorino Veronese, Rina Copyright Maho, Amado Martambo, Federico Mares Aragaza, Kokiro Matsura, Irina Bokova. General Conference. This is the list of the sessions of UNESCO General Conference held since 1946. Offices. UNESCO has offices in many locations across the globe. Its headquarters are located at Place de Fontenoy in Paris, France, now called the World Heritage Center. UNESCO's field offices are categorized into 4 primary office types based upon their function and geographic coverage: cluster offices, national offices, regional bureau and liaison offices. Field offices by region. The following list of all UNESCO field offices is organized geographically by UNESCO region and identifies the member states and associate members of UNESCO which are served by each office. Africa: Abuja Euro National Office to Nigeria, Accra Euro Cluster Office for Benin, Kati-Idva, Ghana, Liberia, Nigeria, Sierra Leone and Togo, Addis Ababa Euro Liaison Office with the African Union and with the Economic Commission for Africa, Bamako Euro Cluster Office for Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali and Niger, Brazzaville Euro National Office to the Republic of the Congo, Bujumbura Euro National Office to Burundi, Dakar Euro Regional Bureau for Education in Africa and Cluster Office for Cape Verde, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, and Senegal, Dar es Salaam Euro Cluster Office for Comoros, Madagascar, Mauritius, Seychelles and Tanzania, Heir Euro-Cluster Office for Botswana, Malawi, Mozambique, Zambia and Zimbabwe, Kinshasa Euro-National Office to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Libreville Euro-Cluster Office for the Republic of the Congo, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon and São Tomé and Príncipe, Maputo Euro-National Office to Mozambique, Nairobi Euro-Regional Bureau for Sciences in Africa and Cluster Office for Burundi, Djibouti, Eritrea, Kenya, Rwanda, Somalia, South Sudan and Uganda, Windhoek Euro-National Office to Namibia, Yaoundé Copyright Euro-Cluster Office to Cameroon, Central African Republic and Chad, Arab States, Iraq Euro-National Office for Iraq, Amman Euro-National Office to Jordan, Beirut Euro-Regional Bureau for Education in the Arab States and Cluster Office to Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Iraq and Palestine, Cairo Euro-Regional Bureau for Sciences in the Arab States and Cluster Office for Egypt, Libya and Sudan, Doha Euro-Cluster Office to Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates and Yemen, Khartoum Euro-National Office to Sudan, Rabat Euro-Cluster Office to Algeria, Mauritania, Morocco and Tunisia, Asia and Pacific. Almaty Euro-Cluster Office to Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, Apia Euro-Cluster Office to Australia, Cook Islands, Fiji, Kiribati, Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, Nauru, New Zealand, Niue, Palau, Papua New Guinea, Samoa, Solomon Islands, Tonga, Tuvalu, Vanuatu and Tokelau, Bangkok Euro-Regional Bureau for Education in Asia and the Pacific and Cluster Office to Thailand, Burma, Laos, Singapore, Vietnam and Cambodia, Beijing Euro-Cluster Office to North Korea, Japan, Mongolia, the People's Republic of China and South Korea, Dhaka Euro-National Office to Bangladesh, Hanoi Euro-National Office to Vietnam, Islamabad Euro-National Office to Pakistan, Jakarta Euro-Regional Bureau for Sciences in Asia and the Pacific and Cluster Office to Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines and East Timor, Kabul Euro-National Office to Afghanistan, Kathmandu Euro-National Office to Nepal, New Delhi Euro-Cluster Office to Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal and Sri Lanka, Phnom Penh Euro-National Office to Cambodia, Tashkent Euro-National Office to Uzbekistan, Tehran Euro-Cluster Office to Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan and Turkmenistan, Europe and North America, Brussels Euro-Liaison Office to the European Union and its subsidiary bodies in Brussels, Geneva Euro-Liaison Office to the United Nations in Geneva, New York City Euro-Liaison Office to the United Nations in New York, Moscow Euro-Cluster Office to Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Moldova and Russia, Venice Euro-Regional Bureau for Sciences and Culture in Europe and North America, Latin America and the Caribbean. Brasilia Euro-National Office to Brazil, Guatemala City Euro-National Office to Guatemala, Havana Euro-Regional Bureau for Culture in Latin America and the Caribbean and Cluster Office to Cuba, Dominican Republic, Haiti and Aruba, Kingston Euro-Cluster Office to Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Suriname and Trinidad and Tobago as well as the associate member states of British Virgin Islands, Cayman Islands, Curacao Sectional and St. Martin, Lima Euro-National Office to Peru, Mexico City Euro-National Office to Mexico, Montevideo Euro-Regional Bureau for Sciences in Latin America and the Caribbean and Cluster Office to Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Paraguay and Uruguay, Port-au-Prince Euro-National Office to Haiti, Quito Euro-Cluster Office to Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador and Venezuela, San Jose Copyright Euro-Cluster Office to Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua and Panama, Santiago de Chile Euro-Regional Bureau for Education in Latin America and the Caribbean and National Office to Chile, Controversy and Reform, New World Information and Communication Order. UNESCO has been the center of controversy in the past, particularly in its relationships with the United States, the United Kingdom, Singapore and the former Soviet Union. During the 1970s and 1980s, UNESCO's support for a new world information and communication order, and its McBride report calling for democratization of the media and more egalitarian access to information was condemned in these countries as attempts to curb freedom of the press. UNESCO was perceived by some as a platform for communists and Third World dictators to attack the West, a stark contrast to accusations made by USSR in the late 1940s and early 1950s. In 1984, the United States withheld its contributions and withdrew from the organization in protest, followed by the United Kingdom in 1985. Singapore took the opportunity to withdraw also at the end of 1985, citing rising membership fees. Following a change of government in 1997, the UK rejoined. The United States rejoined in 2003, followed by Singapore on October 8, 2007. Israel was admitted to UNESCO in 1949, 1 year after its creation. In 1974, UNESCO stripped Israel of its membership on the grounds of alleged damage being done by Israel's archaeological excavations on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. UNESCO defended this decision with two statements in 1974 and 1975, but renewed Israel's membership in 1977, after the United States threatened to withhold $40 million of funding from the organization. In 2010, Israel designated the Cave of the Patriarchs, Hebron and Rachel's Tomb, Bethlehem as national heritage sites and announced restoration work, prompting criticism from the United States and protests from Palestinians. In October 2010, UNESCO's executive board voted to declare the sites as Al-Haram al-Ibrahimi Tomb of the Patriarchs, and Bilal bin Rabah Mosque Rachel's Tomb, and stated that they were an integral part of the occupied Palestinian territories, and any unilateral Israeli action was a violation of international law. UNESCO described the sites as significant to people of the Muslim, Christian and Jewish traditions, and accused Israel of highlighting only the Jewish character of the sites. Israel in turn accused UNESCO of detaching the nation of Israel from its heritage, and accused it of being politically motivated. The rabbi of the Western Wall claimed that Rachel's tomb had not previously been declared a holy Muslim site. Israel partially suspended ties with UNESCO. Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Danny Ayalon declared that the resolution was a part of Palestinian escalation. Zevulun Orlev, chairman of the Knesset Education and Culture Committee, referred to the resolutions as an attempt to undermine the mission of UNESCO as a scientific and cultural organization that promotes cooperation throughout the world. On June 28, 2011, UNESCO's World Heritage Committee, at Jordan's insistence, censured Israel's decision to demolish and rebuild the Murabi Gate Bridge in Jerusalem for safety reasons. Israel stated that Jordan had signed an agreement with Israel stipulating that the existing bridge must be raised for safety reasons. Jordan disputed the agreement, saying it was only signed under U.S. pressure. Israel was also unable to address the UNESCO committee over objections from Egypt. In January 2014, days before it was scheduled to open, UNESCO Director General, Irina Bokova, indefinitely postponed, and effectively cancelled an exhibit created by the Simon Wiesenthal Center entitled, The People, the Book, the Land, the 3,500-year relationship between the Jewish people and the Land of Israel. The event was scheduled to run from January 21 through January 30 in Paris. Bokova cancelled the event after representatives of Arab states at UNESCO argued that its display would harm the peace process. The author of the exhibition, Professor Robert Wistrick of the Hebrew University's Vidal Sassoon International Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism, called the cancellation an appalling act, and characterized Bokova's decision as an arbitrary act of total cynicism and, really, contempt for the Jewish people and its history. Palestinian Authority, Palestinian Youth Magazine Controversy. In February 2011, an article was published in a Palestinian youth magazine in which a teenage girl described one of her 4 role models as Adolf Hitler. In December 2011, UNESCO, which partly funded the magazine, condemned the material and subsequently withdrew support. Islamic University of Gaza Controversy. In 2012, UNESCO decided to establish a chair at the Islamic University of Gaza in the field of astronomy, astrophysics, and space sciences, fueling much controversy and criticism. Israel's foreign ministry expressed shock and criticized the move, and stated that the university supports Hamas and houses bomb laboratories for Hamas. The ministry called the university a known greenhouse and breeding ground for Hamas terrorists. The university has been linked to Hamas in the past. However, the university head, Kamalan Shaf, defended UNESCO, stating that the Islamic University is a purely academic university that is interested only in education and its development. Israeli ambassador to UNESCO Nimrod Barkan planned to submit a letter of protest with information about the university's ties to Hamas, especially angry that this was the first Palestinian university that UNESCO chose to cooperate with. A senior foreign ministry official stated, before UNESCO gave a chair to the Technion and the Interdisciplinary Center, institutions in Haifa and Herzliya, respectively, they checked things with a magnifying glass. In Gaza no one checked. The Jewish organization B'nai B'rith criticized the move as well. B'nai B'rith International President Alan Jacobs said, to so strongly associate an organization meant to promote peaceful goals with a terrorist organization is yet another contributor to the world body's tarnished reputation in the international community. Products or services, IDAMS, a Euro proprietary software package for processing and analyzing numerical data developed, maintained and disseminated by UNESCO. References and notes. External links, UNESCO.org, official UNESCO website.